Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, I must first congratulate Mr. Mendes Bota for this excellent report. I especially noted the statement he started off with this report, with an open mind, which makes me feel that the conclusions and recommendations are even more pertinent, as we often have our own preformed conceptions and perceptions on such difficult issues. I wish to commend the work already undertaken by the UN, the Council of Europe, the Commissioner for Human Rights, and Greta in particular, the European Commission and the European Parliament. It has been groundbreaking and far-reaching. Trafficking in human beings is a horrific human rights violation that is also a multi-million industry for criminal gangs, forced labor, criminality, and organ removal, which are all part of trafficking of human beings. In Europe, trafficking for sexual exploitation is by far the most widespread form. An estimated 84% of victims are trafficked for this purpose. Despite concerted efforts to battle this crime, despite the best intentions, sometimes there is no unanimity as to the legal approach to be adopted as regards prostitution and the elimination of trafficking of human beings. Prostitution and trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation are closely intertwined, and I agree with the rapporteur that voluntary prostitution is a myth, and our positions need to support this. We should support the voices that consider prostitution a form of violence against women. I am not denying that in some countries there may be a more, in a sense, sexually liberated form, and that prostitution may not carry such a heavy social stigma, thus allowing women to engage in such activities supposedly of their own free choice. But this clearly does not represent the majority of cases for whom prostitution and trafficking are the result of poverty, exploitation, abuse, gender inequality, and deficient or even inexistent public policies. It is for this reason that I prefer to see this issue precisely from the position of a human rights and victim-centered angle. It seems, and it is also apparent in this report, that there is a growing consensus that the criminalization of the demand of sexual services, i.e. the purchase of sex, seems to be a plausible way to curb prostitution and eliminate trafficking. Although this does seem to have worked in some countries, such as Sweden, where figures have dropped spectacularly, one must not forget that in countries where the legal framework remains attractive for traffickers, this crime is definitely not on the decrease. Exporting the problem is not a solution. In my capacity as General Rapporteur of the PACE for the child, I wish to state that there can be zero tolerance for prostitution and trafficking involving children and adolescents. It is a crime. It is a crime happening in front of our eyes. A crime where, for many reasons, younger age means higher risk and demand, and where there is no choice. There is just fear, degradation, loss of self-respect, and loss of freedom. The traumas for child victims are permanent and life-destroying. For children, adults forcing them to become sex slaves have in their eyes positions of power and influence, and we need to help them and protect them. We must urge all our countries to fully live up to their commitments in terms of protection for the rights of the child. We must step our efforts to recognize that children merit special legal protection. And we need to do this. Let us make these issues raised in this report part of our national political agendas. Only then can we actually make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now call Mr. Mendes Bota, rapporteur, to reply. Mr. Bota, you have 5 minutes left.
Thank you, Mr. President. Allow me, first of all, to pay tribute to the staff of the Equality and Non-Discrimination Committee for all the fantastic work that they have done. And with a special word to Giorgio Lodo, which accompanied me right from the beginning of this work. And he has a fantastic memory for all the dozens and dozens of meetings that we have done in the fact-finding missions, and only he could get the right messages that we heard. Of course, some of them contradictory. Now, let's say we had a fantastic debate here. It's not all the reports that have 36 speakers, and not all in agreement. Of course, some of them, they have different opinions, and that's what made richer this debate. Of course, I am in favor of the debate. Of course, I want that all the countries, they should reflect about the situation. They should reflect about the model they have or they don't have, and they should reflect and go deeper on the research. That's why some of the main conclusions of my report, we need more available and comparable and reliable data. And we need more survey. We need to know the phenomenon. We need to know who is in the prostitution, why they are there, where they are coming from, where they are going to, what are they earning, are they exploited or not, by whom, who are the chains of the mafias. We need to know much more. But the problem, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, is that I had to do this report now. I cannot push it with my stomach to the next decade. And according to all the information I got, from one side to the other side, hearing a lot of people that were in contradiction. So I came to a conclusion. I'm not saying that the Swedish model is the most perfect model. There are not only two models. There are at least three models, if you want to simplify, which is the Swedish model, you have the prohibition model, and you have the legalization model. So we are not here only to discuss the Swedish model, but from what I heard, and I have no intention to be an expert on the matter, but I heard, I read, and then I had to take a conclusion. And from all what I heard, the most effective up to now on contradicting and combating the problem of trafficking on human beings was the Swedish model. Of course, and I do put it on the report, there are a lot of criticism. Yes, there are weak points. Yes, perhaps they are exporting the problem. Yes, they are exporting the problem somehow, but also because some people are interested on importing the problem. That's the problem. Because when you are legalizing in one country, you are opening your doors to the ones who want to export the problem. So that's why it's important that we all discuss this and the implications. Some people are interested in telling, well, they are different phenomena and they have nothing to do one with each other. Look, after all we know, from what we see, does anybody can say that there is not a strong link between prostitution and trafficking in human beings? Of course it is. We cannot say the contrary. And also, I did not say too much emphasis on this. But of course, this is a problem that also involves, it's a matter of violence against women, and it's a matter of gender inequalities. But the subject of this report and the motion for resolution was to try to establish if there is a link, which is the system that can be more effective on combating trafficking on human beings. My dear friend Fischer, you know how much I like you. But when you come to here and you say that prostitution is the oldest job in the world, I have to tell you that also killing and also robbing is some of the activities that exist since humankind exists, and that does not make them acceptable and good. And we have to rule, and we have to have a policy to contradict them. That's the reality. And also, well, it's all the old question between free and forced prostitution. Well, I had to say this is a myth. Why it's a myth? Because I am convinced, and perhaps I'm not alone on this conviction, that the most part of people today in prostitution, they are forced. The problem is not when they come into. I've been in Berlin, and I've been with one NGO that showed me one of their surveys in their area, and they came to the conclusion that 80% of the young women and girls that are now forced to prostitution, they joined freely because they were attracted with promises of jobs, because the family even pushed them, please go there, try to get some money to bring to the family. Yes, they join freely. The problem is not when they come into the system. The problem is when they enter in the system, they are not able anymore to get out of it. And we have so many witnesses, so many people that finally they are survivors and they came out of the system and they tell us how it was. It was like going to hell and coming back from hell, and they tell us. So, dear colleagues, thank you very much for all your contributions. Even the ones who are not in agreement with all the proposals that I'm doing, they contributed to a rich debate. Thank you very much for your cooperation.